Hey, welcome back. It's been a while since I've recorded a podcast, but I thought it would be fun to share how I've been surviving night shifts as a first year resident. I'm currently in the middle of the night on one of my nights off. I get 2 nights off per week. You do 5 days on, 2 nights off at my program when you're on nights. So Tony is upstairs sleeping where I would usually film videos, and I just really don't have the space or the setup to film elsewhere in the house right now. So I thought I would just do a podcast. Um, anyhow, if you're new here, hey, my name is Alyssa. I'm a first year resident or an intern. I'm going into anesthesia, but your first year, you don't do anesthesia at most programs. And so, yeah, this year I'm doing a bunch of rotations in like medicine and surgery, and it's just like a handful of random different things, general medicine type stuff. And then, yeah, after that, your second year of residency is anesthesia specific things. So that's sort of a background of where we're at. I'm in my third rotation now. I did the critical care unit first, then I did a quality improvement rotation, and I took my board exams. I took them early, like months early. I just wanted to get them out of the way, and it feels amazing to be past that stage. And then now I'm on night medicine. So when I was actually on the critical care unit, I did 2 weeks of days and then 2 weeks of nights. And then for night medicine, I'm on nights for a whole month. So I did things differently as far as switching from days to nights on the CCU than I did for night medicine. So when I was on the CCU, I basically cold turkeyed it. I just stayed up all day and then all night, and then once I got home, I slept. I was so tired around 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I didn't think I was going to make it. It also didn't help that the CCU that night was the slowest that it's ever been in recent years, although it was very lucky for me because it was my first night on. I was terrified, and I was also alone. I was the only resident. It was just me and an attending. Thankfully, that attending was amazing and stayed awake the entire night and was available for any questions about Tylenol, of course. That's like the joke, the running joke. But anyway, they were awake all night long, which was amazing. But anyway, it was tough to stay awake with sort of the low stimulation that was. I wasn't quite so lucky moving forward the following days where it was quite a bit busier. It was pretty much busy most nights, but it's easier to stay awake when you're busy. Anyhow, doing it cold turkey like that was pretty difficult, and I decided that I didn't want to do that again for when I switched over to night medicine. So what I did this time is a few days before I switched it over to nights, I started gradually staying awake later and later and later. Like I pushed my bedtime back about 2 to 3 hours more each night. And I felt like the transition to nights was so much easier this time. I don't feel like it was difficult at all. And my first time that I slept when I got home at like 7:30 in the morning or whatever, went to bed at 8 a.m. I slept like 6 hours, which I felt was pretty good for being on, the first time you're sleeping during the day, technically. Anyhow, it was a lot better. I think I'm probably going to do that moving forward. I think different things work for different people, of course. Some people like to do it cold turkey, some people don't, but I really liked and thought I adjusted better to pushing back gradually. I didn't get any of the crashing around 2 or 3 a.m. when I did it this way, which was really nice. It also depends on your residency program and if you are even able to do the gradually pushing back method. Sometimes you just aren't, they don't give you a lot of days to adjust and whatnot, but my program's really good about that. Anyhow, it's also been interesting sort of changing my routine and adjusting to life with Tony now that we're more or less passing ships in the night sort of thing. So it's also interesting with the cafeteria closing in the hospital and making sure that I have food overnight if I'm at home, and just sort of having to plan ahead like I never have had to do before in this regard. So I actually have to, when I get to the hospital, I need to get there a little bit early to catch the cafeteria before they close and then get some food. And then I also bring a lunchbox with ice packs and then I save that food for like later on in the night shift. That's been really helpful. Sometimes I pack my lunch, or Tony will make me something, which is nice. But that's one thing. And then it's also really funny because when I leave in the morning, the cafeteria is open for breakfast. So then I bring breakfast home, and I'm having technically an omelet for dinner, but it's like breakfast time. And so Tony and I will have omelets together, and I'll bring those home from the hospital, which is great. Um, Anyhow, that's been sort of a funny adjustment. I'm having breakfast for dinner all the time now. And then also, I've been trying to hit the gym a little bit more, and it's just funny because it's forcing me to work out early on in my night. And I kind of like that. It's like, I already went to the gym today. I feel good, and nothing's open now, so I couldn't if I wanted to. And I already went outside, spent time in nature for a little bit. Of course, it's my day off. I don't have time to do all of this on a normal day, but it's sort of nice to kind of get all of that in the quote unquote morning, but it's actually evening hours. Weird, very weird. But anyhow, and then also sort of another thing that I've been adjusting to is like communication with people. I've really struggled with responding to texts consistently for ever since texting was around, basically. Well, maybe I was really good as like a kid, like in middle school, but beyond that, I became really bad at texting, and I've been trying to get better. But one of the struggles that I've had is I don't want to wake people up, especially the people who don't have iPhones, and I can't tell if they have their phone on nighttime mode or silent. And so I don't want to like disturb them. And but Apple, so one of their new updates that's coming out right now, has the ability to schedule texts, and I've been experimenting with that, which has been really fun. But you can only do it with people who have iPhones as well. Anyhow, yeah, that's one thing I've been adjusting to, is sort of like when I can message people, because I don't want to accidentally wake them up at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And then another thing has been scheduling times to chat with people or meet up with people. It's just been sort of interesting. My nights off are typically in the middle of the week, and that makes things a little bit more challenging. But yeah, it's been very interesting. But it's also been better than expected in some aspects. Like when I get home, Tony and I can spend a little bit of time together before I go to bed. Although I try to go to bed right away, or pretty rapidly when I get home. And then when I wake up, Tony's usually just finishing work for the day, so we can spend some time together before I go in, which has actually been amazing, and we've been loving that. It's also really interesting because since I'm just waking up, I have more energy, and that's when his energy is starting to dwindle. So we can kind of like team things really well, like the dishes and all of those things that need to be done. We can kind of like carry the team together because we both have energy at different times. Whereas before, we might both be really tired at the same time and then not get to things, and then, chores build up and everything. But actually, it's so much easier. We've been way better at getting chores done, both when I was in the ICU and then now. Anyhow, yeah, there have been some changes and some adjustments to that. As far as like patient care and decision making during the night, I've actually found like I feel fine. Like I was scared that being on nights, my brain wouldn't work, or I was just really anxious about that. And it might be that thing where you're like unaware of your own deficiencies. I'm sure I'm not as good as I am, and not as on point as I am during the day, but I'm not dangerous, or like I don't feel dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel okay. And that was one thing that really worried me, because I didn't want anything that I did during the night because I was sleepy or adjusting or something. I didn't want to end up hurting someone on accident or doing something stupid or something like that. And thankfully, I've felt okay. Like I think especially with adjusting back, like kind of gradually adjusting into nights, it's been good. And I'm also at a really amazing program, and everyone's so supportive and there for me. And I have like multiple, people that I can call on. And I work directly with a senior. I have another co-intern with me, and we have an attending that are all very involved. So I think that's also one thing. Maybe if I was all alone, that would scare me more. That was more the case when I was in the CCU occasionally. But my program's amazing. I don't feel quite as alone. But yeah, that was one of my anxieties, was just how my medical decision making would be in the middle of the night, and so far it's been okay. Sort of my first impression of night shifts was like, holy cow, this is so busy. So we cap at 4 patient admits a night, and we've been usually getting 3 admits each every night, and many of them are transfers from other hospitals. Some of them are direct admits from the ED, but the transfer patients are often very complicated, and it is sort of, it's difficult for me sifting through all of the information and sort of condensing it and searching for the most important things. And that's been sort of challenging for me, and trying to get a good workflow and pace to everything. It is and it has been a challenge, although I'm adjusting and trying to do things differently every day to see what sticks and what doesn't. But yeah, that was kind of interesting, because you're being paged about patients that you have on the floor, and then you're also being like in the middle of being like admitting someone, although usually our seniors will respond to pages while we're admitting a patient, which is amazing. But anyhow, it's just pretty busy and pretty chaotic, and it just takes a while to admit patients, and especially sick patients. You just have a lot of problems that you need to address, and it's just, it can be a lot. So I think my first sort of impression was that, oh my goodness, this is going to be really difficult. But I've noticed just even in the first week, I'm getting a little bit better every day, and it's feeling a lot less overwhelming. The first couple nights, I didn't feel good. I didn't like it at all. And I feel like that's going to be the case on a lot of rotations moving forward. But yeah, it's been busy. I think that's just the hospital that I'm at, I think, is just busy most nights. And that's just kind of how it's going to be. But I found that I'm adjusting every day, and it's making everything better. Some of the things that people sort of recommended as far as like staying alert and feeling good overnight are like staying well hydrated so you don't get headaches. I'm very fortunate. I haven't had any issues with developing headaches overnight. I try to stay well hydrated kind of all of the time, and I make sure to, eat when I can. And I think that helps. And yeah, I haven't really had any issues with that. I think people have also mentioned like alcohol swabs that you can like put under that you can sniff an alcohol swab if you're dealing with nausea in the middle of the night. I haven't been dealing with that. Leaving the door open, it certainly could moving forward. We'll see. But so far, so good. Yeah. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about like sleeping during the daytime. This was one thing that has definitely been a work in progress, but I've got it down now for the most part, I think. So here are some things that I've done. All right. So the first thing that I've done is we put in blackout curtains in our room, and we're at a place we're renting currently. You can't drill in the walls or anything, but on Amazon, you can get these adhesive blackout shades, and they don't look cute. They're not fancy, but they get the job done, and I sleep so well because the room is adequately dark. In addition to that, I sometimes use an eye mask just to make it even darker because, kind of around the curtains, there's a little bit of light. And depending on how, depending on how like particular I am on a given night, that can be really helpful. Another thing that we bought, because I am a very light sleeper, I always have been, and noise is something that really bugs me. I sleep with earplugs every night anyway, even when we're sleeping in the middle and unlike a normal night. But on days, we got these, I had it like pulled up on my computer. They're called Soundcore Sleep earbuds by Anchor Sleep. They're these little earbuds that are like flush with your ear. They don't stick out. That way you can sleep on your side, and they can make different sounds like ocean and all of that kind of stuff, or you can have your own sounds coming in. So I actually go to Spotify and I have this white noise sound that I prefer, and it's like 3 hours long, and I just put it on repeat for several hours. I just add it to the queue again and again so that it will remain playing all night long. And then it also doesn't have weird sounds at the end of the 3 hours. It's a seamless transition, which has been really good for me because sometimes those little things can wake me up. And then also these earbuds have like adjustable, also I'm not sponsored by the way, but they're like these adjustable earbud sizes, so you can get it to where it fits you really well and so that they're comfortable. I initially was using AirPods, but the AirPods would make my ears really ache. Did I say earpods? I meant to say AirPods if I did. But anyway, they would make my ears really ache in the mornings because they stick out, and I would end up sleeping on my side somehow. Or they would fall out, or they would make that annoying sound like doo-doo-doo when they die, and that would wake me up. You can turn the volume down on that with the newer AirPods, but it still makes the sound. Like you can't shut it off. Anyhow, these like sleep headphones have been such a game changer for me. It's just, they're a little bit pricey. I think they're like $150 or something like that, but they have totally like been so helpful for me. So I would highly, highly recommend that. Those are a couple of the things. I mean, the obvious things are, to drink caffeine earlier on in the night, and, all of the things that you would do on a normal day, just swapped schedule in this sense. And then importantly is having your phone on like nighttime mode and all of those sorts of things. And some people recommend driving home in your sunglasses in the morning. If I remember, I do that, but I haven't noticed a significant like benefit if I have my sunglasses on or not. Yeah, like that's how that's been. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about apart from like that. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could just talk about how the experience has been going just in general. There are a lot of things that I didn't necessarily realize before starting nights. Like, I didn't realize that that we would have so many patients kind of that we were taking care of and also be admitting. For some reason, I just expected like, oh, you'd just be kind of responding to pages all night and whatnot. So that surprised me that it's primarily an admitting service. It's cool that we have patient caps. So we can take a max of 4 admits in a night per person. And then after that, the admits will have to wait until the day team. Another thing that's interesting is that you're really not adjusting a patient's care plan overnight. No big changes. You want to keep the patient stable overnight because the team is smaller overnight, and it puts more strain on the system if a patient starts decompensating. There just aren't a lot of people. So that's kind of an interesting thing, is you're not rocking the boat overnight. And then overnight, at least in my hospital, you're part of the code team when you're on nights. So we're responding to any sort of code blues or any rapid responses on our specific patients. Those have been really interesting things. Yeah, I think adjusting to like making sure you have your meals before the cafeteria closes has been sort of an interesting thing. Traffic has been weird. Where I live, the traffic is actually really bad going to the hospital at night, which I would have thought it would have been the opposite, but it's interesting. I still have traffic going into work in the evening. But that's okay. The traffic isn't so bad going home at the end. Let's see here. Everyone has been great. It's been amazing having a senior resident on with us on nights. They're just so knowledgeable, and you can just ask them any questions. And I feel like I'm sort of starting to get the hang of some things, and it's really helpful just having them to bounce ideas off of and questions too and everything. And I'm also learning that, like when the day team hands off the patients to us, they have sort of checklist items that we can do oftentimes, like check a hemoglobin at midnight for a patient with, let's say they have a GI bleed, or like if a patient starts, let's say they're, I don't know, let's see here. Let's say we're monitoring their kidney function, and we can like check electrolytes and check all of that in the middle of the night. Just, it's kind of interesting because what I'm seeing is like oftentimes, or they'll tell us like, oh, this patient is a quote unquote watcher. Like keep an eye on them. They were pretty sick today. They might have some issues overnight. So you want to keep a closer eye on these patients. Oftentimes what I'm noticing is the patients that they say that for are actually the patients that are good overnight. And it's all of the patients that they expected to be good because they were good during the day. Those are the ones that have the problems. Maybe that's just my experience so far. But it's sort of interesting because oftentimes with those patients that were good during the day, you don't expect anything to go wrong. You're not really sure how they want to handle things overnight. So you're having to look through all of the notes and you're trying to really understand this patient because you have so many patients that you're taking care of. There's no possible way to understand, everybody's clinical course and really have a great grasp of every patient. So you're having to sift through everything and try to understand day teams like preferences and where they're trying to go with this patient and everything. And it's just sort of interesting, like trying to navigate that and everything. But it's also interesting because I'm able to now see what sort of questions I have in the middle of the night. And hopefully when I'm on days, I can sort of incorporate that in and do better. Because that's one thing that I struggled with when I started out in the CCU. We would have to, say certain things, to the date or to the night team, like, okay, check the hemoglobin at midnight, da da da. I would have a really hard time anticipating things that could go wrong with patients. But I think now that I've been on nights, not only now, but for 2 nights in the CCU, I think I can I hope at least that I'll be able to come up with at least a little bit more insight as to what could happen overnight. And then you often give the team like if then statements, like if they start decompensating, do this. If their sodium is less than 130, do this. And I hope I might be able to do a little bit better just because I have more experience on nights and seeing how that plays out. Yeah, I feel like honestly, that's about it. It's been cool. I am glad that I get to do this. It's been a very cool experience and I look forward to future rotations. I'm kind of trying to see, like, would I actually enjoy doing nights long term? Because it actually seems okay. Like, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But also there are some real cons to it. So, but I'm definitely like taking this all in and seeing like, hey, maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Like, if we had a family someday and one person could be sleeping, the other person could be up watching the baby overnight and that kind of thing. So it's certainly interesting to think about all of these things and interesting to have this experience. And I'm looking forward to the rest of nights. It's a few more weeks and then being on days again for the majority of the year moving forward. I will have 2 more weeks of nights when I'm on the CCU again this year. But other than that, I'll be on days and that will be an interesting experience. Oh, I guess one other thing is it's really weird when you've been up all night on nights and then you see the surgery interns coming in at like 4 a.m. and you're like, what are you doing here? Like the shift's not even close to being done yet. And they're just living their life at the hospital at 4 a.m. Sometimes earlier, sometimes they're there like even earlier than that, which is insane. But I guess if you have a big patient census for the day and have a lot of people to pre-round on, you have to get there really early. But yeah, it's been wild. It's been cool. Yeah, if y'all have any suggestions on how to do nights better or questions about nights or anything, please drop them below. I'll try to respond to them. I've been struggling to keep up with comments and stuff, and honestly just haven't really been responding back lately, but I'm going to try to get back onto that. And yeah, we'll talk to you in the next podcast. All right. Bye-bye.